Hello friends. The ongoing fight against COVID-19 coronavirus has unfolded a lot of events which help us create a good understanding of socio-political reality around us. I will pick up one such event and make an analysis of that. And if you noticed one thing, that Indian government, when it announced the lockdown, it asked all its citizens to stay wherever they are, and the migrants who are facing problem because of that, they had been asked to stay in the cities irrespective of the problems which they were facing. Now when the mass exodus started taking place, and a lot of hue and cry was there, the government came under pressure to accept it, though with a lot of reluctance, and still there is a hesitation on the part of government. And the government still wants people to stay wherever they are, and it's not very keen on their movement. Compare this with the foreign travelers, especially the Indian citizens who are allowed to come back to India via flights. And even though when we knew that they had higher chances to carry the germs of corona virus. In fact, it was through flights only, the passengers who travel back to India from foreign territories who brought this virus. It was not through trains, buses or bullock cars that this virus came to India. Still, Indian government allowed them. And not only Indian government allowed them, but Indian government also sent its own plane to bring back them, to rescue them, to airlift them from places where other commercial flights were not available. Now, this anomaly of Indian state, on the one hand, it's bringing the elite citizens from foreign uh, territories into India, and the second, it is withholding the right of movement of its own citizens. Isn't there an anomaly on that? Well, this anomaly can be explained and probably also justified. Indian state does not believe it does not believe that there are any boundaries within the territory of India. So whether you are stationed in Kashmir or Tamil Nadu or in Gujarat or in Northeast, you are essentially a citizen of India and you are part of the same family. Indian writ, the state of the writ of the state is still exercising over there. The state is within its right and capacities and its capabilities to help you if you need any help. The same thing cannot be applied for those who are outside India. Indian state does distinguish between the foreign territory and the Indian territory. The wall between foreign territory and the Indian territories has not melted down, has not been broken, and it's very crisp and clear in the eyes of Indian state. So this is justified that India brought those foreign travelers, even though it is they who caused the spread of the germs in India and jeopardized the life of millions of Indians. What I find more ironical is that many of these foreign travelers who came back to India, or some who are like them, they would grow up and criticize the idea of the boundaries between India and outside. They would, if you have been a student of sociology or political science or cultural studies or literature or any other similar disciplines in humanities, one thing which you would have noticed is that Indian academicians, they look at nationalism with a feeling of contempt. They think as if nationalism and if the idea of nation state is a malaise, and if nationalism is an orthodox, is something which stinks of orthodoxy, or it's a parochial concept, or it's like a disease or a syndrome which must be got rid of. So, I want to ask a question to those academicians today, and especially to those academicians, some of whom would have been rescued by Indian state via such flights. You have been saying that the boundaries line between India and outside world does not exist. You have been saying that the world is a global village, and you believe more in humanism. What if Indian state had also placed nationalism over and above humanism? Indian state was well within its right, especially if it looked through the lens of humanism. The lives of 1.3 billion citizens or human beings is far more important than the lives of few thousand people. So Indian government in this perspective was well within its right to deny you entry, to stop you from entering India. Had it done so, the COVID-19 would not have entered India. People would not have been asked to be locked down for 21 days. Hundreds of those have been killed so far, and the many thousands who are going to lose their life in the future, their lives would have been saved, and millions of Indians would not have been thrown out of jobs or any source of livelihood. Had Indian state practiced humanism more than nationalism. It is because India has more faith in nationalism. India sees the distinction between foreign territory and Indian territory. That is why you are still alive today. Or that is why you were given a safe haven in India. And that is why you owe your existence to India today. The germs which you brought back have put at risk the lives of millions of Indians. But it's only because India realized the difference between the foreign territory and the Indian territory. Now, in future, many of those, especially who had gone to studies outside, see the foreign travelers who came from outside, they could belong to different categories. They could be tourists, they could be businessmen, they could be professionals, and they could be students. They could be teachers. And many of these students would belong to humanities. And as I'm saying, they would have been studying in some of the most elite universities abroad. Tomorrow you will graduate, you will do your research, you will do your PhDs, you will come back and you will become professors in some of the best universities in India, and would have an overwhelming influence on the academic discourse in India. And in those days, then, do not say that nationalism is a dirty word. Do not say that the idea of a strong nation state is a dirty thing. And do not treat nationalism as if it's a disease. Because as I'm saying again and again, had Indian state also believed in the same idea that it does not matter at what part of the world you are located in, the idea of territory is obsolete, is orthodox. If Indian state had also believed in the same thing, then you would not have been allowed to come back to India. And that's again I'm telling you the same thing. Since Indian state, it differentiates between foreign territory and Indian territory. Since it sees that yes, there is a wall which exists at the borders, that is why it allowed foreign travelers to come back to India. In fact, it helped them to come back to India even when they were posing risk. But Indian state, it does not see any boundaries within India, from Gujarat to Meghalaya and Arunachal Pradesh, and from Kashmir to Tamil Nadu. There is no boundaries. There is no boundaries as such, and that is why Indian state believes that yes, it can ask its citizens to be wherever they are. If and when need arises, it will send its force and some medical help or whatever help they need, and that's why it's not asking them, and that is why it is reluctant to allow them to move from one place to other. So that's the conclusion which I wanted to draw out of this is that nationalism is not a dead horse. It's not stinking of any smell. At times we do need it, though a lot of valid criticism also exists, but it cannot be outrightly rejected. It should not be subjected to such harsh criticism in a consistent manner as we have seen by most of our intellectuals, especially those who have been trained in foreign universities, who hold important positions in foreign universities, and they come back and gain an overwhelming influence on the Indian academic discourse. So this was my certain observations. Thank you.